Come on, revolution. So hello, good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know if you're hearing me. So I think we can start the meeting as others will join later.
All right. How many more people are we expecting?
We should be 7.
7. All right.
Yeah, so I think we can just move a bit then I'll introduce the speaker after that and then we can.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so we can start with Suba.
Hi,
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Suba I'm a member for, there's an echo, I don't know why. Let me restart my phone.
I think as Suba rejoins, we can have Jacob. Jacob, you can say I and maybe say your name and your expectations.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. What am I supposed to do, or just introducing myself? Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Yako. From Kajiado County, and I'm so happy to be with you to join the session. In fact, I don't know why I'm also having that echo. I don't know what is the problem. I don't know if it is on my side or on your side.
So thank you, Jacob. We can have Mandela. Mandela, you can say hi.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm called Mandela from Nairobi, working with an NGO farm within Nairobi.
Thank you, Mandela. Maybe we can have Suba.
I'm Suba, working in Kisumu, part of the BBYI.
Thank you so much, Suba. I think that's the team we are having for now, and then we can just continue as others will join us later. So I am Katile Mutuko, and I'll be the moderator. I'm part of the BBY team, and I'm the director and maybe the organizer of the training session. So today we'll be having our 4th session on interview skills. I know we were to have a session yesterday, but we postponed it. So we'll be having the session on 23rd, that is on Saturday, and then we'll have the last session on 26th. So maybe if you wanted to join the session yesterday and you didn't make it, I'm sorry because I communicated late. Yeah, so our topic today will be having Acing your interview, part 1, and our speaker or our trainer will be Steve Osomba, who's a seasoned communicator seasoned in communication, is a PR and marketing specialist, and he lead partner at SMD Consulting Associates, dedicating to driving excellence of African SMEs. So welcome so much, Stephen, and maybe you can say more about yourself so that others now will join. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katile, for the introduction. Let me just start by sharing my screen. Please confirm if you can see it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can also see it.
All right. So my name is Stephen Osomba, and I'd like to welcome you to the 5th session of Barrier Breakers Youth Initiative Career Training. So I was thinking that this was among the final sessions that we are going to have, but it appears there's one more that we skipped along the way. But we'll be able to continue nevertheless, and maybe tie up all what we've learned since the training began. But first, let me take this opportunity to thank Atile Mutoko for inviting me to be part of this noble project. Now, for the past few weeks, I think from 8th, we've been able to cover a few sessions. I think there's a basics of interviewing in session 1. Then we had interviewing psychology in session 2, making the right impressions in session 3. Then I think planning and preparation was postponed. We are now in our last session, and we get to learn more about the nuts and bolts of Acing your interview. So at the end of this session, you'll be able to communicate effectively, manage your time better, and also handle difficult situations that may arise during interviews. This session will come in 2 parts. In part 1, we'll handle meeting the interviewer or the panel. Then we also look at communication skills that you should have during an interview. So this is what we'll tackle today. Then during the next session, scheduled to take place on 26th January 2021, we'll now focus on dealing with difficult situations. I believe we'll have a very interesting discussions when that time comes. Then we also look at showing time management skills, and lastly, a step-by-step guide to success. So this will be an interactive session. So I will encourage all of us to be proactive so that we get the most out of this training. In case you have any question or clarification, just use the raise your hand icon. And I'll be able to send a message in the chat box. So I think we can just get into it straight away. So I'll start briefly by introducing the firm that I work for. So I work for a company called SMD Consulting Associates. The company was founded in 2015. We do strategic marketing consultancy for SMEs, and we have been doing it for around now 5 years. So we help companies, mostly small organizations or startups, to do sales and marketing, brand innovation, marketing technology, content marketing, and a bit of strategy. So our focus as a company is to try and help the small businesses to solve their problems and be the best businesses maybe not regionally, locally, and regionally. Then something about myself. So as Katila had mentioned, I'm a communication and marketing specialist. I've been practicing for 6 years now, and I hold a Bachelor of Science in Communication and Public Relations from Moi University. I also have a postgraduate diploma in marketing management from the Kenya Institute of Management. And then lastly, I also hold a master's degree in marketing from the University of Nairobi. So career-wise at the moment, I'm the lead communication and marketing associate at the firm, where we work with clients to try and find solutions to their problems, innovating strategy, and just making their business prosper. And when I'm not making SMEs great again, I like to read, travel, and also to conserve the environment. So I'll quickly jump through to the first part of our discussion this evening. And as I've mentioned earlier, we are going to look at the meeting the interviewer and the communication skills required for a successful interview. So this part I've also divided it into two. We have now the first session. Before we take a short break, we are going now to look at the meeting the interviewer. And when going for the interviews, we usually there's a lot of preparation that should be done. And I don't know if you knew that the average length of an interview is around 40 minutes. So the question is, how can one use this short time to win or to convince the panel or the interviewer that they're the best suitable candidate to take over the job? Okay, let's see how we should go about that in the next few slides. Now, the first and the most important thing that comes in when now you've applied, you started all the way from recruitment, you saw a job interview, maybe in a job website, Brighter Monday, or Best Jobs Kenya. There are so many today. You applied, you prepared your CV, you submitted, you're among the shortlisted candidates, and now you have been invited to go and meet the panel or the interviewer. So the first thing that comes in that I think you should do is to prepare for all the preparation that you've been doing now culminates to a date with the panel or the interviewer. So by the time maybe you are receiving a communication, a text or an email, all preparations should have been completed by then. So the reason that I say that I emphasize the word preparation is because adequate preparation will give you the much needed confidence to navigate your interview. You realize if you go for an interview and you're not prepared, your mind is unsettled, or your mind is scattered all over, you will not be able to do well. So you should be able to be composed, prepare well, going by the previous sessions that we've had that have taken. Those are the things that now you should have focused on so that by this day, you are ready to face the panel. So the first point will be now, you need to arrive on time. So by arriving on time, like let's say today, we had, now we are having this meeting. I was able to maybe join the platform 30 minutes before time. And this has given me time to compose myself and just be ready to do this training. So the same concept also applies to you as you are going for a job interview, that you arrive on time. So I would recommend, let's say, if, let's say the job, you arrive, let's say 45 to 1 hour before your appointed time. So by doing this, you'll be able to familiarize yourself, the environment, and also help calm your nerves. So sometimes you find that, let's say for those who are in Nairobi, if maybe you're invited for an interview, because Nairobi is known for, is a city with the worst traffic jams in the world. So typically, let's say in my day-to-day operations, maybe if I have a meeting with clients or I'm going to meet somebody, I usually leave my house 2 hours before the appointed time, because you never know what might happen along the way. So if you leave early enough, you'll be able, let's say you live in a large city like Nairobi, you'll be able to maybe anticipate things like traffic jams so that you calculate that time before your arrival. So you by getting to the potential employer on time, you'll be able to relax, have some time, maybe go through your preps again to ensure that everything is okay. Instead of arriving late, sweating, running, panicking, you might not really do well if you arrive late. Then now, assuming you've arrived on time, 45 to 1 hour before your appointed time, you most likely meet the receptionist, or in some cases, maybe the gateman or watchman, and you'll politely request them why you visited them on that day. And I think at this point, I would urge that if you're going for an interview and the first person you meet mostly likely is the receptionist or the gateman. And I've seen there's a lot of I would say people who look down upon those who do support staff work. So that maybe you are rude to the watchman or you are rude to the receptionist. More often than not, you'll be surprised to know that sometimes the receptionists wield a lot of power within the organizations. They are the ones who maybe can block your application at some point. So imagine if you decide to be rude to them, if maybe later you're supposed to interact or you have been sent to consult with them on something, if they'll treat you nicely. So, and this should be a virtue that should not only apply during job interviews, but I think it's a virtue that we should calculate within us so that we embody it, the virtue of humility, to be humble at any given time, whether you're seeking for a job or whether you're interacting with other people. I think you should be able to be humble at every given time. So you've informed them, and maybe they have a list at the reception desk. They check your list. They check if your name is among the list. Of course, they'll find it. Then they'll request you to maybe take a seat and wait for your turn to face the interviewer or the interviewing panel. So here, a lot happens. It's a sort of your meditation time before, like, you go to the dragon's den. So maybe you can use that moment to think through the interview questions, how you're going to respond, any other information that you might have missed. Just polish up everything so that you are ready for the interview. So at this point, I'd like to maybe pose a small question to the panel. What, when doing preparation, what should you have in your interview pack? Maybe I'll pick somebody randomly. Jacob?
Yes.
What should you have in your interview pack?
Before you face the phone. I think you are supposed to prepare your document.
All right.
Academic documents and document and the CV also. I think you can have.
All right, thank you. So you'll realize there's also one thing, just before I move to the next slide, there's a thing, a point I'd like to emphasize in regards to the interview pack and how you present yourself. There are people when maybe, of course, when you're invited for an interview, you like to carry your CV. You might need to have maybe a few copies in case you're going to face a panel, because they like to maybe review as you talk. Then, of course, you now will have your certificates and maybe copies in case they ask for them. And maybe let's say recommendation letters from your previous employers if you're employed before, and any other relevant documents that might be needed. Let's say the certificate of good conduct or health clearance. Now, all these documents, as Jacob has mentioned, need to be presented in a professional manner. I've seen in other interviews that I've attended, there are guys who go to an interview using the A4, the N4 envelope. So if you've inserted all your documents in A4, maybe it's very old, you have been hustling with it, working from employer A to employer every time. So it's so old, it's not properly presented, it's not professional. So I would like to say that that one also affects your reputation. It tells a lot how maybe neat, how organized you are. So I would maybe say at this point, all your interview pack should be in a folder. There's some folder being sold in supermarkets where they have several leaflets. You can insert your documents into them. It becomes sort of an album for credentials. So certificates all the way, maybe starting from primary school, secondary, college, and perhaps university, and other testimonials that you've received from your employment. So buy that folder, then carry it nicely so that when you go for the interview, you present yourself in a professional manner. So while you're sitting here, you'll be called. Of course, you'll stand up gently and maybe walk to the interviewing room with your interview pack in tow. So this is the hour or the time has come. So I'd like us to talk a bit, just a short break, have a short discussion in regards to different types of interview that exist. So I'll just explain before we'll do a small poll. I'll just explain this one. So an individual interview, I'll say, is an interview one-to-one, mostly. One-to-one, or one-to-one. You go, you yourself, and now the interviewer. You're just talking between you two. Then group interview, it's a situation where you have so many candidates coming in. Then you have maybe one or two interviewers. They're coordinating the whole session. So they ask questions in tow. So if maybe you are 5 or you are 10, they ask questions. I'll tell you an interesting interview I went for a group. Then they ask question in turn. Then you answer that way. They do that until they go through all the questions. Then lastly, now there's the panel interview. And in panel interview, you are alone. Then there are several people. It depends on how big the organization is. I think the last one I attended, we had around 7 people. Those ones, so you're alone, you sit at the center, then they're on the opposite side, they ask you questions. So I'd like to know which of the following types of interviews would you prefer and why? So I'm just going to share a poll with you. Please type www.menti.com. If you have a phone or another gadget. So let me chat box. So www.menti.com. Then enter password 7419067. Then cast your vote. So let's have 5 minutes, please, for this. Cast your votes, cast your votes. We have one person. Anyone having every problem accessing the site? I've sent the details on the chat box. Yes, Charles? Okay, we have Olia saying individual. Who else? You can also cast your vote in the chat box if you're not able to access the site. One more person. Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you. Jacob individual, Mandela panel. You've casted your vote. All right, so I think let's see. So the results are 75% will prefer individual, 25% will prefer panel interviews. Nobody wants to attend a group interview. So let's start with, maybe I'll pick somebody who wants, let me ask who wants, who can say something. Why would you prefer to go for an individual interview rather than the rest? Any volunteer? For those who voted individual interview. Let's hear your thoughts, please.
Hello?
Hello, Edward, yes?
For me, I choose individual.
Yes.
I think talking direct, confident, and facing a panel. So you can see someone is looking you in a different way. Dress in a funny way. I can at least study the eyes of that person, maybe kama ananiangalia ama anafanya. And also it will be safe on my side talking to one person.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other person who wants to say something in regards to individual, why they prefer individual interviews?
So for me, I can hear my echo from the other side.
Okay, let me mute.
Yes. For me, I prefer individual because one-on-one talk. Makes me a little bit for a group interview. So at least I will be able to pause and get to reply, and then I can get the feedback from the interviewer. So that one-on-one interview makes me confident, and I can say that I don't know if I don't know. I can make a right decision when I am on a one-on-one interview. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Okay, one-on-one interviews are easier because you are close to the person who's asking questions. You can look at that person face to face. You can get even feedback immediately from their facial expression. You know, group interviews are very intimidating. What if someone starts responding more than you? Thank you.
All right. Any other person? Yes, Edward. Edward, you're saying something? Okay, let's go to the other team who think that panel interviews are better. I would like to know why you think panel interview will be better. Mandela, I saw your vote.
Okay, I didn't vote for panel, but panel interviews are good somehow. There are so many people there. So if one is against you, you can find. Then
Okay.
you ask some people and different perceptions.
Thank you for that, Suba. Anybody else?
You are able to hear me? Hello?
Hello, we can hear you. Yes.
Oh, so
Go
me
ahead,
the
please.
idea of the panel interview. One, by being shortlisted for the interview, I want to believe it's not a guarantee that you're going to get the job. So for the panel interview, you are able to, at least there's something that maybe one person might not have seen in your documents or maybe in your presentation that someone would critique, as compared to maybe an individual panel where one person sees you the way he sees you and might not have maybe a comment out of, might not say something, maybe did say something in you. But you see in a panel, these people will sit through your papers and maybe give a feedback. Maybe what Mandela saw is not what Steve saw. So they are able to critique your papers jointly, as compared to maybe an individual where that person only maybe has just focused in a particular thing in your papers. And also in a group, you see there's also a lot of favoritism. Maybe one person speaks louder than the rest. So maybe they would favor him because he seems to be loud as compared to this someone who is a bit quiet. So you might not get the favor. So me, I would prefer a panel where at least you get the view of a number of people who may say critique you both positively or negatively, and maybe you learn from it from them.
Okay, thank you, Mandela, for your contribution. Anybody else before maybe we proceed? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Okay. Now, maybe if I could share maybe a personal experience of, I've attended all the 3 interviews. And I think one thing I would say at this particular point is that these skills that we are learning this evening, they may not necessarily apply for maybe for a job. You can also use them for if you decide to be self-employed or decide to be an entrepreneur. There are a lot of pitches that you should organize. So being able to face, you can go for an individual pitch, one-on-one with maybe the procurement manager, or you are several suppliers in one room with the procurement manager, or you are alone as a supplier with the panel, the tender committee. So they apply both ways, because sometimes you see, you desire a job. If I speak for myself, sometimes maybe when I graduated, I tarmacked for around 9 months before I got my first job. And 2 months in, I didn't even want to wake up to go to that job anymore. So sometimes you get to want something, then when you get it, you realize maybe your interest is no longer there, or that particular company does not interest you. So I've attended individual interview. The last one that I attended just right before I proceeded to start my company, it was a one-on-one, myself and the HR lady who was there. And I was supposed, I think, to go for 2 rounds of this interview. So that was the first round. And during this first round, I didn't make it to the second round. And I'll tell you why I didn't make it, because the interviewer was very rude. So, because I think we'll talk about this in the next session, because sometimes you get yourself, you answer a question, it seems they're not satisfied, they still want more. And for yourself, you think you've said everything, there's nothing more to say. So in this particular case, for me, the interviewer was a bit rude. She felt that she was doing me a huge favor. And it's something that you'll always meet or encounter whenever you are searching for job opportunities, maybe jobs or tenders. For some unknown reason, people have become a bit rude these days. I think because we have few job opportunities, and those who have those job opportunities wanaringa. So people, they don't treat you so nicely. This lady had a bit of contempt towards me. So I did all I could do, but I did not make it. I knew even before I walked out of that interview room that I was not going to get that job. Then I think there's another one. I have attended a group interview. I was surprised nobody has supported it. Actually, it's a bad idea. I went for a group interview. We were about 15 candidates, and we were placed in a very large hall. And there were 3 interviewers there. So what they did, they had a set of questions that they were asking all the candidates. So they start from, let's say, left to right. So we go round. So I think the biggest drawback with this type of interview is that, of course, some as Mandela have said, those who have better communication or rhetoric or can articulate themselves better will stand out from the rest. But for me, I think what I didn't like about the entire interview process was that the answers that I had for the questions that they were posing had been said by somebody else. So maybe let's say if you are the 15th person, the question you ask the question, the 15th, everybody else has spoken, the 14 people have spoken before you, you are the 15th person who is supposed to speak. And all of them have said something that you are prepared to say for that interview. So what will happen? How will you stand out from the next person, you know? So then at the end of the interview, it seems like we were bidding for the job. They asked us everybody to write their salary expectation on a piece of paper. Then we submitted to I think the chief panelist who was handling the interview. So it's like we were bidding. I think they took the person in the lowest asking. So I've never attended any other, but I think it's a bad experience. I will not even ask anybody to go to it. Then the third one, this panel interview, which I think you've raised strong points for it, Mandela. And panel, I think the best advantage for panel interviews where you meet so many people and you are alone, you are most probably to be treated fairly because you'll have different panelists. There's no bias as compared to individual interview. If somebody does not like you there are high chances there's somebody who will like you in another interview. And I've gone for, I think I have 2 experiences on this panel interview. Let's say as an entrepreneur and also as a job seeker. So as a job seeker, I think those were several years ago, around 2015. Yeah, 2015, when we were invited for an interview at the General Motors along Mombasa Road. We had done several interviews, so that was the last stage. So I had faced a panel of about 7 people. And during the panel, I sat in the panel. There was one person who was very hostile. I think we'll talk about, this forms a difficult situation. We'll talk about in the next session. There was one panelist who was very hostile towards me. And at that point, I was a young man. I was not sure how to respond. I felt harassed by the panel. Only one person who thought that I could be a good candidate for the job that they were advertising. I don't know if they still do it. It was this graduate trainee jobs that they advertise at General Motors. But needless to say, I did not get it. I guess maybe there are other people who were better than me. So when going for meeting the panel or the interviewer, you should be able to know who are you going to meet. what type of interview are you going to have? You can also ask beforehand if there is a panel or is a one-to-one, so that maybe you prepare accordingly. So picking up from where we left, so you have been ushered in by the receptionist to enter the interview room. And you should note at this point that your interview begins immediately. Begins immediately, you enter the interview room. So people observe the way you walk, the way you, maybe eye contact that you have. And I would urge that maybe you be in your best behavior. So here it means being best behavior is to be conscious of your nonverbal communication. So nonverbal communications comes in so many ways. And the trick or the secret behind nonverbal communication, the reason it's very effective for somebody else who is assessing you is because you'll do it unconsciously. So maybe you might cross your arms, or you might be looking away if you're a shy person, you know. So these things tell a lot about your behavior. So if you are keen, you'll be able to note very minute details about people or other people, even in day-to-day life. You can uncover some things that ordinarily you'll not know just by observing a nonverbal communication. So when you have been ushered in, you said, okay, Mr. Mandela, please come in. Then perhaps, depending on how you behave, now that's why you're saying you observe your manners. Because sometimes maybe if you go to somebody's house, you are at the door, you have been ushered in, the most courteous thing for you to do is to wait to be shown where can you sit in the house, you know. So if you say, let's say if you go to an interview now, it's a panel type, then you'll stand, then maybe the chief panelist will ask you to maybe now take a seat. So you go, most likely the setup will be, we'll have a table, and the panelist, maybe 5 to 7 or whatever the number, then you'll be at the center, maybe the small table to put your documents or your laptop. Now, as you stand there, or you have been ushered to, or you are waiting for instructions from the lead panelist, you need to take a quick read of the room. So you look, how many panelists are there? 5, 3, 7, and do they seem friendly or warm? Are there person, because now this is where the nonverbal communication, now you use it to your advantage. You take a look of their nonverbal communication as the interviewers. If there's somebody who has a serious face, eye contact, are they showing contempt? You can also see if somebody is contemptuous. So you take a quick feel of the room, see, are they in a good mood? What's the sitting arrangement? Is it a dragon's den where you are the center, then everybody is facing you? Or it's more of relaxed, you just sit anywhere among them and you talk? So you need to know the general mood in the room so that you're able to prepare yourself accordingly to answer the questions. So once seated, it's advisable that you wait for instructions from the lead interviewer. Sometimes you might be triggered to produce your documents that you had carried nicely in your interview pack. You lay them, because you shouldn't do that. Nobody has asked for them. Probably for interviews, they just want to get a feel before they'll now ask you to bring your certificates to prove that you can do whatever you said you can. So at this particular time, most interviews don't require the academic credentials, but you need to carry them all the same if they ask, because there are different professions that might require a bit of clarifications. So you just get seated and wait for instructions from the lead interviewer. Now, since Okay, majority prefer the panel, the one-on-one interviews, because you're able to control the situation. You only have one person to convince. And you can also get feedback, as Suba had said, from the interview. But then the drawback that has been mentioned was that there's a bias, because believe you me, people make judgments by the impressions they see first. If that single interviewer does not like your face, it will not matter how good you are at your job. They just feel that negative energy, and that's that. Most probably not proceed with your interview. But let's assume that you have a panel, so that it means you have a fair chance. If one person does not like you, the others might likely be rational and judge according to merit. And for panel interviews, they usually have head of departments from various parts of the company organization. Of course, the HR will be the lead panelist, HR manager or director. Then maybe depending on the role that you're being hired for, head of that department, let's say with sales and marketing, will be there. We can have maybe somebody from operations, we can have somebody from, let's say, the CEO's office to come and represent the CEO in the board, so that they ensure the hiring is fair and square. So I'll assume that now we are going for a panel interview, which is the most difficult also. But the principles that we learn from this panel interview will also apply to individual scenarios, maybe with a little bit of tweak. So the first thing you should note if you are faced with a panel interview is that you should know who is asking questions. Who is asking questions from the panel? And I think most organizations, what they do, they usually begin, if it's a panel interview, they usually begin with introductions. So you'll see, let's say somebody will say, I'm Stephen Osomba, head of marketing. I'm Mandela Koyanda, head of human resources, so on and so forth. So that you should be able to know their names and their position as they ask you questions. Because when you're responding to the questions that they'll raise, you should be able to relate the answers of that question to their role in that particular organization. Let's say if I'm the head of marketing and I ask you a question, I should be able to relate your answer to marketing, for example. If if I'm the head of marketing and I'm there to represent the marketing department. So when now answering questions, you need to recall and use each interviewer's name and role throughout the meeting. Because now this one, it should show two things. You are keen, you're very keen, which is important. Attention to detail is a very important thing. Then it will also show your prowess, ability to relate concepts from different parts of the organization. And most importantly, people like being known, or if maybe let's say if when you go for networking events, when you meet people, chances are that that person who you meet, you won't remember his name or her name. So by recalling that, people, they feel appreciated. If you call somebody by his name, Stephen or Suba or Mandela or Jacob, so that they feel appreciated, they'll create more connection by doing that. So as they interview you, you also need to take notes of important points raised by the interviewers as the interview progresses. So sometimes, and this causes a lot of confusion for many people. And because there's sometimes the panel might be organized, okay, so that they ask question in turns, then they give you time to respond. In other situations, people just talk. Maybe the lead interviewer is asking a question, somebody else among the panelists is also infusing another point in whatever the HR is saying. So it's important, maybe you have yourself a notebook that you're using it to take notes of important things that they are saying, so that when once they are finished submitting, now you take time, look at the point, and maybe respond in a structural manner, one by one. You handle all points one by one. So remember, in the interview pack, you need to also have a notebook that you can use to take notes down and respond to the panelists. So I'll have a short discussion here as well. I'd like to know, what's your greatest fear when going for a job interview? What's your greatest fear when going for a job interview? So you can send your answers in the chat box. Or what's your greatest fear? Edward, please. Oh, Mandela, you can say something.
I was actually typing, but let me just speak.
Yeah, okay.
My greatest fear maybe would arise, like you see, someone might just come up with a question that's totally out of the context of the interview, maybe just to find a way of knocking out you in the shortlisted candidates. So that is just my fear. Someone coming up with a question that's totally out of the context and he wants to put me down with it. Like I remember, maybe if I give a story, there's a time I came for my first time when I was looking for a job in Nairobi, where I'm now based. I came for an interview for the first time, and that guy was asking me about, I don't know, that time there was something that came up that was, it happened in the world. Then that person was asking me, wait, that the particular country that where that thing took place. Then I was like, this is not even part of the interview. So I was actually knocked out because I was not in the know of the current circumstances. So maybe mtu anakuangusha tu chini because of those nitty-gritties. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you for your comment. And I think we'll handle this being asked questions out of context, and we'll see how you can handle them. And then I think from chat box, I can see Edward. His greatest fear is meeting a big number of interviewers. And and he says, majorly women. Mr. Edward, would you like to maybe comment further? I'd like to hear your perspectives on this. Maybe for the women who are here, or ladies who are here, they might be able to know or learn from others why you fear women. Edward, are you not comfortable talking? So I don't know if you're talking, we can't.
Maybe
Okay.
Steve.
Yes.
I think Edward has a problem of confidence. He has a challenge in confidence. So maybe just need to build his confidence in approaching the both genders, the female gender and this other gender. I think that's the biggest problem, yani. So you should actually work on how best you can maneuver through working with the both parties, because you see, again, when you get a job, you need to be very dynamic in how you want to work with both genders, because the moment you fear women and you are a man, then that would be a problem again, because not all employees will employ you where you only work with a particular gender. You must be diverse.
Okay, thank you for the contribution. So I think maybe just to add to, okay, Edward didn't want to talk, but he says that he finds it natural. Of course, if you are, let's say, I would say from what Edward is saying, maybe he's a shy person, or he is an introvert, let's say an introvert, and introverts don't like, okay, no problem. Okay. He's an introvert, maybe you don't like where there are so many people, because if you are an introvert and you go where there are so many people, you feel like your energy is being sucked out, you know. And maybe for women, I would say that perhaps, you know, people say, I don't know if the Suba, maybe you might guide us. Wanawake wako na maneno mingi. If maybe that's why perhaps maybe Edward does not prefer interviewers, big number and majorly women. Maybe Suba, if you can give us a perspective from a woman's standpoint. Is Suba in?
Suba is not in.
Oh, Suba is not in. It's fine. Then I think the other, Jacob is saying that being asked a question that he does not know. I think which also relates to what Mandela was saying, being asked a question out of context. So that's the biggest fear that I would say most people face. I think for me, if I, in my situation, I think the biggest fear when going for a job interview will be being harassed. I think being harassed by any panelist when maybe submitting my answers. So, and this also applies to when you're pitching for maybe tenders and whatnot, being able, there's also fear, especially when you meet a panel, and they will most likely find somebody with chafu hapo ndani that will try to drag you and so that you fail. All right, so as we proceed, I want us now to transition to the communication aspect of it, because for the previous slides, we are looking at just the meeting, you are preparing to meet the interview or the panel. Now, questions are coming in. I need to answer the questions that are being directed at you. So I think I would say at this point is that communication skills is one of the most important skills that you'll ever need for any role. And these skills can be either written, spoken, or through nonverbal. And from my experience, I also learned that, I don't know, for some reason, that people who have done STEM courses, by STEM courses, I mean those who have studied science, maths, mathematics, technology, engineering, they tend to be very poor communicators. I don't know if you have engineers or anybody who has STEM qualification in this session, but those people don't communicate really well. However, it is very, very important that you are able to communicate well. And considering that now from the previous steps that we had taken, you realize that mostly you have been relying on written communication because you wrote a cover letter. Then you prepared your CV maybe an introduction email when sending your application. So that one you can easily pass because you have time to rework and revise your application to have the perfect grammar. English is well written, everything's just superb. Now the next test now comes in now how to articulate your points when it comes to the interview. So the first thing I would say that excellent communication skills are essential for workplace success. And workplace success, because communication plays a role when it comes to coordination, mostly coordination. So you need to coordinate with your colleagues. Maybe you are doing a task together. You need to write emails, you need to talk. Maybe if you are an employee who is front-facing employees, customer care, or you are doing sales, you need to have very, very good spoken skills because you'll be interfacing the company's publics. So being able to communicate is really important. There's no way you're able to make it without communication. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, I think communication skills is a common unit within our, let's say, university. But the execution is usually not very good. So sometimes maybe as a student, you might need to, or as a person, you might need to take some time to go and polish up your skills properly. Because now if you have a class of 1,000 people, there's no way you'll learn there well. You'll have to make maybe a personal effort to learn. So if you've landed an interview, you need to know that your communication skills will be assessed. And the assessment basically will cover, they look at how you communicate, how you articulate your points, how you are explaining, the nonverbal cues. So things like confidence, listening, what else is it there? They'll be able to pick out those points to see, will you be a good fit for the organization when, let's say, if you are selected to be with them. So as a result, now if you are conscious of the fact that you are being assessed, your communication skills are being assessed, you therefore need to communicate with the utmost professionalism. So this is A1 communication. And we are going to look in turn all these types of communication as you navigate through your interview session. So we have the verbal, now that's the speaking part, which is I think I'll say it's more or less 60%. Then we'll have non-verbal, can take the other 40%. Then written and visual, those ones would have been assessed even before you reach there. So chances are that you had already performed well in those particular points, So verbal communication skills. And I would say that the verbal bit, I think, stands out in an interview setting because you are going to use it, I think, almost 90% of the time because you'll be talking. And you need to do it, therefore you need to do it very well. And I can give you, if we relate, let's relate a bit to even our politics. You'll realize that politicians who are able to articulate themselves usually have a good, a very responsive crowd when addressing political gatherings because they're able to express and articulate their points very strongly. And most of them, you find that they use rhetorics in delivering their speeches. So when they come into the podium, the crowds go frenzy, people are celebrating, people are shouting, because they're able to connect to connect with their audience through the power of speech. So when we look at verbal communication, I think the most important point I would like to plug in here is that you need to use a strong and confident speaking voice. You know, being able to express your points strongly, like somebody who has conviction in what you're saying. Because sometimes you like to avoid things like interviewer asking, for example, please speak up, or don't be afraid, you know, and if you're not able to speak up, this one will eat into your points. They'll say, okay, what will happen if we send this person to meet maybe our biggest customer? So you need, because when you speak with confidence, it shows you are sure of your competency, you are able to deal with whatever situation that will come up. So when you're being asked questions, speak confidently and strong with conviction. Don't show weakness in your speech. Then I think the other point I would add would be use of active listening. And I was surprised that when I was in college, we had a whole unit that we were being taught listening. So sometimes it might seem something very trivial, but it's very, very, very important for us to know how to listen. I don't know, maybe we'll have a small session and get feedback from you. What's your experience for those who go for networking events on how you will judge the listening? So by active listening, it means that you are paying attention to whatever the speaker or the interviewer is saying. And this one, more often than not, it's accompanied by non-verbal cues. So you'll find yourself, you're shaking your head, you're nodding, you're writing. It means you're actively participating in listening. Then maybe I'll ask, okay, let me just proceed, then maybe I'll ask that later. So the other point, because these ones now make a point, they all tie back to our ability, public speaking, our ability to speak in public. So then the other point that I'll encourage is that, okay, just before I proceed to listening. So when, for example, active listening, when the interviewer is asking you a question, you are able to, you can also ask questions if maybe something is not clear. You can clarify. Maybe at the same time, probably you are shaking your head to mean you are understanding whatever they are saying. And after that, after active listening, you are able to respond. Because there are some scenarios that maybe you are talking to a person, and the interviewer will know if it's called now the opposite of active listening is passive listening. And the interviewer will know if you're not attentive. Because they'll ask a question, then after they finish submitting their question, you will be proceeding. You'll ask, okay, please come again. Those are not very good signs. It means that you're not listening attentively. So do not make an interviewer to repeat a question. And if something is not clear, I think the best will be to ask for clarification, but don't make the interviewer repeat the entire question again because you are not listening. Because at this particular point in time, you should be able to stay away from worries. Because what I usually encourage anybody that I meet is that what will be will be. You can only control circumstances to a certain extent. Beyond, there's a certain point that there's nothing you can do. You can only do your best. So the issue or the point here is to ensure that you do your best, let's say in this time, to participate in listening, whatever the panel is saying, so that you get all the instructions, get the questions right, and you're able to respond in an effective manner. Then the other bit is now the filler words. By filler words, I mean there are those words that you use to fill in thoughts when thoughts are broken. So let's say there was like, so what those things do, they destroy your reputation. It means you're not sure what you're saying. And this mostly occurs, I think somebody had mentioned when you ask a question, out of context question, something you do not know, you're most likely to use a filler words. And if you are an excellent communicator or public speaker, you should be able to overcome such a challenge. So when you're asked, so maybe let's say Mandela, you're asked that, please give us a scenario when you are able to successfully solve a problem with your team members. Then, so you're now at this time you're required to give an example of a problem. Then you check through the panel how you went through the problem. So sometimes, let's say you did not expect this question to come up, and in a rush to try and answer it, I usually encourage, if somebody asks you a question, just take a few seconds to think through, maybe 30 seconds, think through your answer, then speak. It's not a must that you speak immediately. Chances that if you have not organized your thoughts well, you're going to have these filler words. Those ones, they're usually a turn off for anybody, not only the interviewers. So the trick to overcome filler word is to take a pause briefly, think through, organize your thoughts, think through the points that you want to share or you want to respond to the panel or the interviewer. Then now proceed and speak smoothly without filler words. The filler words are such a turn. Then the other point is use of simple words. And by simple words, I mean, because for every industry, there are industry jargons that exist. So maybe if I ask Mandela, I see you have mentioned that you are in NGO world. What are some of the jargons that you use in your NGO world?
I don't know which one now to bring out, but I think it also depends with the kind of project we are implementing. But you see, like if I talk of CSO, that to someone who doesn't work in the NGO world might not really understand what I mean by CSO. Yet that really means civil society organization, which also translates to be like an NGO. I don't know whether I responded to your question right.
Yeah, that's okay. There are others that I think they are common: pivoting, synergy. So when you go for an interview, there are those words that try to use simple words, because sometimes you might be tempted to use those difficult industry jargons that people maybe on the panel cannot easily understand. And the temptation will be that if you use this jargon, they'll think that you are smart. Maybe you're smart. But if you're smart and they're not understanding whatever you're saying, it does not benefit anyone. So as you communicate, it's important to try and use simple words that the panelists are able to understand. So then the last point here, I think talked briefly about it, is take time before responding to the question. So by taking time, you pause, because there are situations where the panelists might ask a question. Perhaps it's one of those questions you are not prepared to answer. So you need to take time to think through how am I going to respond to this particular question. By taking time, because you might think that if you delay for a moment or for a while, the interviewers might think you are wasting their time. Sometimes the other interviewers who use that tactic to see how you perform under stress. But you need to remain calm, collected, so that you don't lose your cool. You just take time, a few 10 to 30 seconds, think through your answers real quick, then respond to the questions. There's no rush. Some interviewers use it to stress test. They look at you. So that's why you find that all eyes are on you. All the parents are looking at you when you're quiet. But you'll perform better if you take a moment to think through your answers before you respond, okay? Now, still on communication skills. So when you're answering the questions, you need to engage the panel or the interviewer with your responses. So by this, I mean that you need to relate, all right? You need to relate the answers that you are giving to the panelists so that you talk to them. It's more of a conversation. Yeah? You use the words like you. Yeah? So so to do this, you need to answer each question directly, but then elaborate by adding points to address the perspectives of other interviewers. So by perspectives, there's a point I'd mentioned, I think, in a slide before, that in a panel interview, we have different HOD or head of departments drawn from different organizations, so that when you're answering their questions, when you're answering their questions, you are able to relate those answers to the perspectives of other interviewers. So let's say that you've been asked your strengths. What are your major strengths that if we hire you, you'll be able to bring into this organization? Let's say that's the question, for example. And in the panel, you have a HR. Let's say you have just 3 people. HR, you have a head of marketing. Then let's say you have a head of operations who are on the interview panel. So when you're asking, let's say the HR has asked you, what are your strengths? Can you tell us about your strengths? And let's say one of your strengths is ability to organize, planning and organization. You have highly high ability in organizing things. So coordinating, and all that stuff. So when you're asked this question, you say that you're able to organize. So you want to relate these answers to the HR. You want to relate your answer to the marketing. You want to relate your answer to the head of operations, so that you're able to, you engage everybody feel, okay, if this person is working with me, I'll be able to liaise with him very well, given the examples you've given. So if your strength is organizing, let's say for the HR, you say you are a team player, you are able to put together your team to execute a task, and you give an example. Maybe let's say you are planning let's say team building. Let's say you are planning a team building on behalf of the HR department. You'll be able to contact, let's say, different suppliers from A to Z of doing team building. So for the HR, they'll be able to see that organization from that aspect. Then let's say you are given you want to relate your answer to the marketing department, and you're saying you want to demonstrate your skills for organizing. You say, if you have an exhibition event, you'll explain how you'll organize an exhibition event from A to Z, from contacting suppliers, getting quotes, and ensuring everything runs smoothly. And when it comes to operations, because operations mostly deals with ensuring activities within the company run smoothly. So how will you, let's say if you are a team manager or team leader, how will you be able to organize? Let's say if the staff under the operations department to undertake different activities to ensure that, let's say you are delivering goods to a particular client, a large order, a very big order, how will you be able to do that? So when you are responding to the interviewers, you should be able to give perspective to all relevant departments that are represented in that panel. So by taking a role specific, now that the question I'm saying, and modeling it to apply to each person on the panel, you will have strengthened your rapport with the entire group instead of just one specific interviewer. So if I've answered that question, every head of department feels that, okay, this person has a fit, he has organization strengths, ability, he can work in HR, he can work in marketing, he can work in operations. So what this will do, they'll feel involved in your interview, because there are interviews that you'll go, if you're not engaging all the panelists, maybe 10 minutes into the interview, some other people will be holding onto their phones. Perhaps they are bored, they don't feel engaged, and you don't want that. You want to convince each and single one of them that you're the best candidate suited for this particular job that has been advertised. So you need to engage every panelist. You need to answer the questions relating to them. And of course, we are going to talk about it. While doing so, you need to now have a verbal look at eye contacts. Those are key points that you need to focus on. Now, we've spoken about verbal part, sorry, how you are supposed to articulate your points, engage with the panelists, and use simple words. Now we move now to the other bit, which I would say also contributes. They go hand in hand, because when you are explaining you are articulating a point, you're most likely to use hand gestures, they'll see. So it's important to mind your body language. And by minding your body language, I mean that you need to be conscious of your non-verbal communication. These are things that happen unconsciously. So you may be tempted, maybe during your interview, to focus your attention solely on the interviewer who was the most senior position. Let's say mostly it's the human resource manager or director, and they tend to ask the most questions or ask the most in the ultimate hiring decision. But as we've pointed in our earlier slide, it's important to make a connection with each representative. So when responding, direct your initial answer to the person who asked the question. Then as you continue to elaborate, provide examples and address other interviewers, as we had pointed out. So when now it comes to the non-verbal part, here is where we have now the eye contact bit. So by eye contact, we mean you should maintain good eye contact throughout the interview, because so that if you're answering a question, maybe from the lead panelist, you answer that question, then as you give answers to or examples relating to other departments, you shift your eye contact to those particular representatives. So sometimes it's okay to look away occasionally, but for the most part, eye contact should be steady. Your eye contact should be very steady. but not in a weird way, just normal eye contact. So what this does is it shows confidence and inspire trust that in all that you say. So you need to, as you maintain the eye contact, because you're doing so that it doesn't become weird, you also need to look down. Maybe you're taking notes. You move your gaze from one interviewer to the next to establish a more conversational atmosphere. So it eases down the tension in the room. People become relaxed when you have eye contact, and you're able to connect more with the panelists. So I think the other skills, let me just go back a bit. There are skills when it comes to, you should also smile when it comes to non-verbal communication. So because when you smile, when you're feeling stressed, a smile usually relaxes your face, and if you relax, you'll be able to articulate your points better. So an introductory or occasional smile shows that you are enjoying the conversation, which is very important. Sometimes if you have a stone face, somebody might think, this person is not interested or energized for this job. So if you smile, it shows you are enjoying the conversation. Everybody will feel involved. And also it adds to your confidence. Then I think the other aspect would be handshake. You need to practice handshake. And if I don't know if there are still ladies in the room, I find this one with most ladies, they don't have handshake. Mtu anakusalamia kama hataki, ni kama anapanguza mkono, But now again with Corona, I think this practice of handshake most likely will not, it will be a new normal. We won't have handshake anymore given the pandemic. But previously, firm handshakes used to represent confidence, somebody who is assertive to take a job. So handshake mostly happens when you enter the room, the interview room. Depending on how many people are there, you might decide to handshake all of them, then sit down on your designated seat. Then the last bit I would maybe like to highlight when it comes to nonverbal is posture. So by posture, how do you sit when you're doing an interview? And this is usually affected. If you are nervous, you'll find yourself taking postures that are communicating negatively to your interviewer or the panelists. So things like crossing your arms or crossing your legs is okay, but I think you should not doing so much. So you need to sit up straight with your shoulders back and your feet fairly firm on the ground. That's the best way. So that you also show that you are a humble person. I find people who cross their legs to be, I think they have a sense of grandiose, in my view. I might be wrong. But for me, I think if you meet, then you sit that way, I would take it that you have some sense of grandiosity, and that might not augur well with you. So the best and safest way is to just sit up straight with your shoulders back and your feet firmly on the ground as a good student. All right. Now, you're still in your interview. So in addition to the responses that you give, your ability to communicate will also be evaluated, as we were discussing before. So there, you're not giving answers for the sake of it, but they're also checking how you're answering these questions. Are you a good communicator? Those are the questions that I want to know. So, like, for example, what are your verbal and non-verbal communication skills like? How well do you explain your answers? How articulate are you when it comes to the interview? So, do you listen carefully to what the interviewers are saying, or do you interrupt and try to dominate the conversations? There are scenarios that sometimes we are humans, we can be easily triggered when somebody, maybe one of the panelists can say unfair comment towards you that borders an insult, or your family believe in your point, that maybe one of the panelists is articulating a wrong point, illogical point, then you just stop them and interrupt and maybe answer. So this one also shows a lot on your ability to lead and your ability to listen and also embrace other people's points of view. People who try to dominate or interrupt are people who are narcissists. They just, everything they think should be about them. But this one should in no way come up during your interview. You should be able to just listen to what the interviewers are saying. Don't interrupt, let them complete their submission, then answer, give a rebuttal to whatever they're saying. Do not be argumentative, because also if you're argumentative, it means you don't accept criticism, positive or negative. You're not tolerant, and people who are not tolerant cannot survive in organization, today's organization, because there are so many scenarios that can come up and it might be very difficult for you to navigate. Then they also assess, so do you look at your interviewers in the eye when you speak to them? So what does your body language say about you? Your body language should at any given time communicate confidence, trust, competency. All these points should come out without somebody necessarily looking at your CV, because there are people you meet when you go for networking events. You can just see how they talk. Then you just say straight away, this guy is smart. This guy is smart. So you should be able to look at your interview in the eye when you speak to them and let your strong points come out without you necessarily explaining them. All right. So all throughout the organization, the interview session, you should know your communication skills are also being assessed. Apart from you being able to pass across your points. Personally, I believe that communication is your armor when it comes to navigating through interviews. Because if you are not able to talk about yourself well or express yourself well, there's nobody you'll be able to convince. Because if you can't talk about yourself, who will listen to you? How will you represent, for example, the organization when you're not able to communicate better? Now, so when we still continue on the assessment bit, when interviewers ask their questions, they do so not only to gain information from you, but to see how exactly you communicate through verbal tone and non-verbal. So I think I'd highlighted that point before. Then, so as we tie up this entire presentation in terms of now communication skills, we are looking at this, the hiring, top communication skills the hiring manager will be evaluating, will be listening, which we've referred in a few slides back, listening. And not only listening, active listening. Because if you go there and you start saying, please come up, pardon, that one will not augur well with the panel. Then the other thing that also need to focus on and is confidence. But be confident, I think in one of the sessions a while back, they covered confidence, but not cocky. Don't be cocky. There are people who are cocky, but just maintain a balance, strike a balance in your communication. Then you also should be able to display friendliness. Are you easy to talk to? Kuna watu sura ngumu, hawataki ku engineers. I think that we have an engineer, somebody was mentioned here, or he's not an engineer, but you're not easy to talk to. So kuna hiyo stone face, if you're not able to talk to. So that friendliness also can score a point. You are warm, you can easily connect to other people. Then do you appear non-verbal? Do you appear to be stressed or uncomfortable. I would say, I think that particular interview that I was referring to earlier, the one-on-one that I had, that the interview was rude. When I was approaching it was at Riverside where we had the terror attack. So when I went to the gate, you know, the security at that particular place is very tight. So I had to leave my ID. So when I was ransacking my bag, I could not find my ID. So I had to give them my NHIF card. So when I was going to the interview, I was like, where's my ID? You know, and I was stressed about it. I shouldn't have, but because I can easily replace, but I don't know, for some reason, it bothered me and it interfered with my performance during the interview. Because at some point the interviewer, are you okay? But I could not tell them I've misplaced my ID. Of course, she was so rude. So this, if you are uncomfortable, stressed, the interviewers will be able to pick it out real fast. So we want them, if they note some, if you are uncomfortable, they should not, or the only nonverbal cues they should get you are positive ones, not negative. Then, and the most important, respect. So I think this one becomes a problem, your ability to show respect. Are you respectful to other people? Because you realize, maybe this one I would say happens to positions, maybe top level, C-level suits, directorship, maybe manager, where maybe you are coming from an organization, you are earning, let's say, a good blue chip corporate, maybe pays the managers 350,000. Then maybe you go to an organization, they tell you that the offer here is 250. So if you know you come that, so you know that you are paid well from where you come from, or you are paid well more than that person who is interviewing you, or you want to show you're highly learned, maybe you're a PhD holder, maybe that person is not. So you want to be rude to them, that one will throw you out. So the aspect of respect and humility, I think, go hand in hand, regardless of your stature in the society. So things like how clear and how concise are your responses. So sometimes you can find candidates who are verbose. So I ask you about, tell me about yourself. You go like 10 minutes, you're just talking. So mostly you're talking about things that are not relevant to what the interviewer is asking. So it's important to be clear, straight to the point, and concise, so that also you're able to move faster. You know, so all these are being assessed during your interview, and it's important that you be aware of them. So I see we have 7 minutes. I'll want to use this time to invite any questions from the floor. Do you have any questions? You can type in the chat box or just unmute yourself and ask.
Maybe I have a question, Steve.
Yes.
There's this idea of when you go to interview, then the interviewers choose to take you through a written interview. What can you say about it?
So as I answer this, maybe others you can jot or ask. So written interviews are usually common these days. The reason they are common is because, one, we are not really sure of the quality of graduates that we have these days. And if you can remember, I think there was a year that the national exams at Form 4 level was, there's a leakage, and many students got grades that they do not deserve. So my opinion is this, that organizations that do written interviews or written tests, they want to know if whatever you've presented as your academic credentials stand test of time. Because I can tell you for a fact, as a person who runs a business, you'll meet people with very superb CVs. Wait till you give them the job. You'll highly regret. And by there, I used to really hate people who, because you see, most people say that we are not training our graduates for the job market. So I just thought that was some talk. People who are on the other side, I say, till I got into the field and started a business, and I realized, okay, it's true. Whatever the employers are complaining about, there's a lot going on. So the written interviews are meant to test, because these days you can say you can do anything, then you go let and learn on YouTube. But they want to know right there and then, are you able to do whatever you're saying? So for me, I think it's a fair chance. It's a really fair chance. And for you to demonstrate your skills and capability for the job. And I'll encourage it. I think during my time, the most common ones were for the general motors. We did a test. It was some random test. For PwC, we also did a test. I went several for those graduate trainee programs. The only one that I think I reached the finals was the General Motors that I was able to. But it's a good experience, because if you are naturally bright, it will just show. If you don't know, you'll just fail. So I think it's a fair hiring process, if you ask me. Mandela, is that clear enough, or you want further clarification?
No, I think I've heard you.
Okay. Any other question? Any question before we close? So next week, I believe, after the Saturday session, I think we'll meet again. If you'll be available, you can come with a friend, can discuss together, put our minds together, and see how now, because now the other session we are going to discuss dealing with difficult situations, because there are several situations that occur during interview sessions. So how are you supposed to deal with those situations? And also, we're going to look at time management. And these skills, the advantage of this training is that whatever we learn here, whatever the ideas that we exchange in this session, will not only help us in our search for job, but we also get to learn just productivity skills that can help us in our other areas of lives. So we'll also have a look at checklist to success. We'll discuss what you need to do to ensure that you are successful in interview. So at this juncture, maybe I'll invite Katile Mutuko to maybe give us a word before we close. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you, Stephen, for Osomba, for that session. I'm really glad for you have taken us as you finish, as you have said, not only to skills that we can employ during interview, but it will also help us in other parts of life as we are communicating with others. And also maybe it will also take part in presentation skills of someone. Maybe when you're presenting someone, you need that confidence that you need, effective communication during speaking, when you're communicating with us. So thank you so much. And I really liked the way you did it. And for the participants, so thank you so much. Maybe before, maybe I can say anything more. I think if any of the participants have a question, maybe they can say something. They can ask the question of if they have like a point of clarification, or maybe they want to add on something. Maybe they can have that opportunity to say something.
Maybe from my end, I would first I would just appreciate what Steve has taken us through. It's so much informative for someone who's out to learn, and I would really encourage us to maybe share this. Okay, maybe when you have the next session, this was my first time, but I think I've learned something I didn't know. So I would just encourage you guys, maybe you share with us the link early enough, so we are able to share with, especially these young youths who are still seeking for job opportunities. They should actually find opportunity to come and learn from this platform. It would really be of more importance to those people who are actually trying to seek for job at that first stage. You see, that's where they get the first, they want to learn how to go through the interview process. Some of us, at least we've gone through this interview. So it's like a recap to us, but it would really have a lot of impact on those who are actually a start off. So you just share with us this link early enough, so we're able to share within the platforms that we are in that can bring on board these youths from the low levels.
Okay, thank you so much, Mandela. Actually, this training that you are having, it's a TOT training. And those who are participating in this training will be trainers on interview skills. So maybe you just got the link because we just wanted to have more TOT on interview skills. So actually, this is our fourth session on interview skills. The first session was on 8th January. We had a session on 11th January. We had another session on, I guess, on Monday or Tuesday, and this is our fourth session, and then we'll be having 2 more sessions, and then we'll end the interview skills stream. So it's like, it's a program on its own on interview skills, and also on, this is part of the career development training we are having in our group for COTs. COTs trainer of trainers. So the same people will be trained on CV writing, and they are also trained on cover letter writing. And then after now they complete the training, they will be trained on maybe personal branding, and then that is the end of the career development training from our team. So basically, now after we are done with the training of TOTs, that is maybe early February, we'll now start having cohorts to train them on interview skills. So I guess after that, now we'll invite other people now to be trained on how they can approach interviews. I think we'll make it to reach out to more youths, and it will really be helpful to them. So maybe you may want to continue with the training. You just like us, you can just, I guess if you mail us, it will be easier. Maybe we can try sharing the recordings of the previous session, so that now utashikanisha with this session, and then now we will share the link for now, because the fourth training, we don't expect any new member to attend, because now they will not get what we did previously. And now I think this is the last session a new member can join. So we'll share the recordings of the previous session, and then we'll have recordings of this session. So for the last 2 sessions, it's only for the people who have attended any of the previous sessions. And if maybe a person attended 1 session, they must go through the recordings of the other session and they read, because at the end of which all will have certification as TOT trainers. So you can't be certified if you didn't attend the training. So basically that's what our group is doing. It's just a pilot, and if it works, we will go and reach out to more youths. So thank you so much. Maybe because I didn't see anyone else speaking, there's something also Stephen spoke that was important about time management, maybe in interviews, and we'll be also having the last session. Stephen will take us. Will be. I think he clarified that it will be on how to deal with situations, on time management, and the advantage of going through this journey. And before that, on 23rd, that is on Saturday, the same time we'll be having a session on, it will be a session mostly on questions in interview skills. So that's the topic we'll be having. Then after that, now we will end the interview skills training. So basically, if you attended the training from section 1, basics, psychology, making the right impression, Acing interview part 1, and then you go to part 2. I think at the end of it all, even if a panel comes to you, at least we'll have maybe 70% of courage and confidence in answering and also winning the interview. So thank you so much for attending. And maybe some left due to internet, yeah. So I think I have all the emails of all those who are in the training except Mandela. I think Mandela, you can just email that number, that email I've shared in the chat box. Yeah, and then we'll try sharing the recordings. For our trainer, Osomba, Mr. Osomba, we are so grateful and so thankful for such a wonderful session. And I hope we'll interact more in the next coming training and future training. So thank you so much everyone for attending. If maybe there's nothing more we can have, I can give a chance for Mr. Osomba to say his parting shots. Then maybe today Jacob can pray for us and then we end the session.
Okay, thank you, Katila, for the kind words. I believe this is an important project for exchange of ideas. I think what we lack, maybe as young people today, is peers that you can engage with in fruitful discussions that can help us transform our societies. I want to believe that this is just a stepping stone for us. And I want to thank you for all of us who came in. And I know we started a bit late. I'm a timekeeper. I was here on time. So maybe perhaps next time we'll start on time, maybe 6:30 sharp, so that we're able to cover much. Because the next session that we have will be a bit packed. So it's important that we arrive on time. And thank you for creating time to exchange ideas this evening. And I think we'll link up again on 26th, same time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Before I pray, I also like to say that I'm very happy and I learn a lot from Stephen. I really appreciate, and we are gaining a lot of knowledge from you people. Now I'm regretting that I never attended the first session because I never got the link. But now, the 2 sessions that I attended, I learned a lot, and I also see my mistake that I used to make when I attend the interviews, and now I can now correct because I get a lot of knowledge from you guys, and I really appreciate. So allow me to pray and also for us to close the session. Father, in the name of Jesus, Lord, we worship you, we honor you, we glorify your name. Thank you for the evening. Thank you for giving us the grace, oh Lord, to attend this session, my Father. Thank you also for our trainers. Thank you for impacting them with knowledge and also for giving them the grace, oh God, and the care to share with us that knowledge, oh God. We thank you, oh God, for giving us the grace also to listen from them. We thank you, Jesus. We thank you for everything, God. Thank you for even this session. May you bless everyone, oh God. As you are going to end it, Lord, be with us and bless us, God. In Jesus' name, Lord, we pray. Amen.
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 Bye,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Thank you so much.
If we don't have anything else, maybe we can call it evening, and have a good evening all.
Okay, good evening to you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.